little podcast type thing that I thought of. A little Kiddush idea. Explore it. Good evening, my holy brothers and holy sisters, or whoever's listening. My holy brothers and sisters, or my unholy brothers and sisters. This is Daniel Levy in Scottsdale. Now, I want to explore an idea tonight about loss and about loss of potential or loss of what should have been, could have been, would have been. Because a lot of us, including myself, carry around cases of coulda, shoulda, wouldas and should have been in relationships. And the whole concept of a loss is like a very big deal. There's a woman named Leslie who has a mother who always had a mental illness, and so she never really had a mother. Her aunt was very much a mother to her, but she still thinks it should have been my mother, should have been there for me. Tonight, a 17-year-old, actually, it's a theme today, that my mother should have been there. So they shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And we all have these wishes. A wish in psychoanalysis and psychoanalytical theory. Dr. Gore, my old supervisor, used to always tell me, a wish is a very, very powerful dynamic in a person. Something that I wish would have been. But I want to use some insights from a Rebbe Nachman story, the holy mystic Rebbe Nachman ben Vega, and to explore an idea that it's possible that that object of desire was never mine to begin with. And this whole idea I'm carrying around that it's not fair, or I wish I would have been raised with, or why did it have to be that I lost that, or didn't have this, lost that job, lost that opportunity. And that it's possible that it was never mine to begin with, and that there's something else in store. And that the very holding on to something is keeping me chained to the past, to a fantasy, essentially, that is just not ever was going to be. Now, one of my holy brothers listening in the Chicagoland area, he grew up with two parents that had disabilities. He pretty much raised himself. And it took him a long time to accept that this is his parents. He even takes care of him in COVID and in nursing homes. He's a big tzaddik. He's a big person. And I'm talking to. And he wrestled with shoulda, coulda, woulda. And we came to the conclusion that he's an emotional orphan. Because he never got guidance, validation, all the emotional nutrition a person needs. So it seems like the object of his desire that would have been so emotional health was never given to him. Spiritual awareness and knowledge was never given to him. And it's a loss of what could have been. A loss of what he wishes would have been. But let's hear this story. So it was told this story in the name of Rebbe Nachman, the mystic, great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, founder of Hasidic movement and Torah True Judaism, that there was a clay digger. So in the shtetl, there was a guy. Everyone has their job in life. Somebody's got to be the garbage man. Sometimes I joke at work and say I'm an emotional garbage man. I'm a therapist. Take out the garbage. Sometimes, so there was a clay digger. The clay digger would go to places, sort of, and dig for things, looking for what people might have dropped, might have gotten buried. It's sort of like today when you go to the beach and you see those people with those little sonar, like, scanning devices. You almost think like they're like an alien device. They're like looking for remnants of something, coins, watches, something that fell on the ground. So this is like the 1800s equivalent, the clay digger. So the clay digger was digging in the ground, and he came upon not his usual find. His usual find, he'd find bits of garbage or used metal or whatever he could sell, trade. But this time, as the story goes, he found a very, very valuable jewel in the ground that, he didn't know whether it was, something very expensive or very inexpensive. He didn't know. So he brought to the town jeweler in the local province, and he said, this is a very, very fine jewel. This is worth a lot of money. Hang on to it carefully. I don't think anyone here even has the means to buy it from you. So he went to the local, more regional store, and they same on, and they came to find out that there was a place called London with a jewelry kind of precious gems district that would be the only place in the whole area where you could get what you properly would be worth this jewel. So, one problem, he had no money. He didn't have like the 401k that he could dissolve, and he didn't have, a savings account. He didn't have even much to trade in much to his name. So his dilemma was, how am I going to get to this place called London? So he borrowed money from various people, explaining to them how great it was and how wealthy he was going to be. And Rahmanis, they thought, okay, who knows, but let's help out the clay digger. So he got himself some very nice tailored clothes, and he got himself a ride to the port, and guarding his jewel all the way. So days pass, weeks pass, he's finally ready, the boat is getting ready at the port. And he's there, and he's meeting people, mingling, networking, and so excited about the long journey and the arrival in London. So you get on the boat and things start, and he enjoyed the company, and everyone thought he was quite a well-to-do man, and he sort of learned how to, walk with the Joneses, so to speak. And every night, though, he would take his dinner to his kind of place in the ship where he could look out the window, and he would place the jewel on the table and look at it. And as he ate, he would look at the beautiful jewel, and it would warm his heart and warm his stomach. And whenever you're eating in a good mood, it's just better for digestion, and it made him happy to see what a wonderful thing that he had. And so it would go on night by night. Somewhere midway in the trip, he was again down in his room eating, looking at the window, letting the breeze flow in. And hold on, I missed one piece here. Rewind a few days. So one day, he was up mingling with people up on the deck, and the captain pulled him aside and said, "You look like a trustworthy man. I would really like to offer you a business deal." He said, "You see, Mr. Clay Digger," I guarantee you did not call him Mr. Clay Digger, and I have no idea what he renamed himself, but it wasn't Clay Digger. Maybe it was like, it wouldn't be Clay Diggeria, because that sounds too much like diarrhea. And maybe it was Mr. Clayton. Mr. Clayton. Who knows? So let's just say, he says, "Mr. Clayton, you seem like a very trustworthy man. I'd like to enter into a business deal with you. I have a slight problem on my hands. As the owner of the boat, there are certain import and export laws in London, and I cannot bring in the commodity and product that I have in the main hold of this boat. There's a huge quantity of wheat that I'm going to bring to the big market in London, but it's not allowed to bring it in without extraordinary taxes. So what I like to do is sign over all of this to you, And you, as a foreigner, will be able to have a highly, highly less of a tax import cost. And I'll give you X percentage, and then you'll return it to me. Mr. Clayton Digger, he thought to himself, okay, this sounds like not a bad idea. Fine. And so time went on. And again, a few days later, he's sitting there eating his dinner, looking at his precious jewel with the wind blowing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the boat does this kind of jolt. And the jewel goes out the window into the ocean. Deep down into the water, gone for good. The jewel was gone.
Why?
Because it fell out the window, out of the boat, into the water, down into the sea. Now, Mr. Clayton Digger had almost a heart attack on the spot, a panic attack. And he's like, oh my gosh. I mean, you have to realize that he went into massive debt in order to take this jewel to London, where he would then be able to sell it. And now it's gone, and he has nothing, and he has debt, and he's freaking out. But he decided he didn't want to give away his cover, because then, he'd be even more trouble, because some of the things he had bought and done on the boat were bought on credit. And so therefore, he tried to keep a low cover and just trick himself into thinking everything's going to be all right. Now, in the meantime, shortly thereafter, he got news that the captain of the ship had a heart attack and had died. And so he realized that he was now the owner of all of the wheat, and there was no one who even witnessed the secret business deal he had and had no idea of the conditional nature of it. And so then they arrived at the port, and being the rightful owner of the wheat, he was able to bring it through customs, pay some taxes, and sell it. And he became extraordinarily wealthy. In fact, he became so wealthy, like he could have bought many, many, many of those jewels, like who knows how many, 20, 30, 40 times over. And he went back to his hometown and never had to dig for clay again in his life, and repaid everybody all his debts. And that's the end of the story. Now, Rebbe Nachman, I read actually says about the story, and we see here that the jewel was never his to begin with, and the wheat always was. So this is kind of a cool story in general, and I was thinking about that story and thinking about work, and I wonder if a lot of the things that we hold so dear that should have been and could have been but weren't were never part of the screenplay anyways. And how do we know? Because they didn't happen. And when we're taught by our Muna teachers that Hashem knows what he's doing, and Hashem wrote a script for us in our life, and if it didn't include, a bandit with a black mask and a sword, then a bandit was never ours to have in our life. If it didn't include a parent who knew how to parent, or a spiritual education, it didn't include money, it didn't include a father, it didn't include jobs, it included the lack of health. Maybe those things were never ours to begin with. Okay, my nafkamina, who cares? Because if you think about that and let it settle, it means that it was never ours to begin with. Meaning, this that I'm upset that I should have had a mother and I didn't, or I should have had a father and I didn't. It was never ours to begin with, and therefore there is no shoulda, there is no woulda. It's not ours. And so we're really crying over a fantasy of what our mind is projecting backwards. Coulda, shoulda, and woulda been if it weren't for. And I wonder if instead there's some much greater gift that we could look for, like the wheat, or notice that we lost the diamond and jewel. It's not maybe a perfect metaphor, but the idea of it could be that a person, had a relative and they passed away, God forbid, or they had a job and they lost it, or they had health and it went away for a while, that maybe that was never theirs to have during this chapter of our lives, and therefore we're really doing ourselves a disservice by holding on to these thoughts so strongly that it should have been different than it was and is, and instead open up to the idea that there's wheat in our name, and to take the bigger gift, which is already been sent or is on its way. And also another way I think we could apply this tool is that just because right now we're in a loss from someone or something or an opportunity we had that is now gone, we're in that in-between state. We got to hold on tight. We're in the state with the jewel in the sea, and not yet the news that the captain hasn't passed away, and we don't know that it's going to work out, and we have to hang on with faith, with emunah, and believe in that which we can't see, that there's a big thing of wheat coming up, and it'll pop up, and it'll be like, wow. If I'm so busy thinking about what shoulda, coulda, woulda, and how unfair it is that it didn't, or that I lost, I might be too distracted to even realize that this wheat deal thing is right in front of me. So easier said than done. But take a look at your life, and is there something inside that keeps broadcasting that it should have been different, and that and this shouldn't have happened? And see if you could examine it and challenge it, and see if you could imagine that maybe it was never yours to begin with. Maybe it was never meant to stick around as yours. It was just passing through you on its way somewhere else, and that there's something much greater in store for you. So it's the 10 days of tshuva, of returning to the path that we belong on, of doing the right thing, and of moving forwards, and rethroning God as king in our minds means he's the ruler, the creator of the whole world, and all the stages of our life, all the events we want to work on. And I would love to be able to make a lot of progress this year. We can all be blessed to do so, to believe the truth of what is, that God is orchestrating all the past chapters of our life, what was and what wasn't, what was and then wasn't, and that we can search to re-king him in time, in past, present, and future. Like it says, V'haya, V'hova, V'yihiyeh. What God was, is, and will be, that he is a king in the past, and all the times that we didn't realize that he was the king. He's the king now, and he'll be the king. He's also like a parent, like a father, and so he loves us as well, and he knows what he's doing, and to deepen this into our hearts until it affects an emotional change in us. So Thank you for listening.
No.